Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
The grand deception as matrix is all-encompassing, broad-reaching, veiled in the subtlety of finite machination, so covert in imposition. All those born into its nurturance are raised unknowingly, incarcerated by its deviant proposition. One was never even granted choice or opinion which could assert deviation from its programmed assimilation. Parents, grandparents, ensure loved ones foster compliance. Children make swift accord, resonating with sentence which postures them for role as good worker bee or soldier ant, ready to surrender life for benefit of queen and hive. So few of the farwalkers can even grasp the dialectic fashioned as prison. Even those privileged with instruction and advantage are lost to resolution, which, connecting all dots, grants one insight into the revelation which unlocks all speculation, illuminating the secrets of life, effort, and being. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Studio B at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. For the next 2 hours, I'm going to be talking to you about this matrix and the subtleties of its machination to help you to understand the complexities of design that we are all born and fostered into, how we have not even a choice to decide whether to accept it or not, but because our parents and their parents before them have all been brought up and unified in belief system and have all bought into, again, without choice, bought into the American dream, the materialism, the corporate 9 to 5, the be a good taxpayer and support government and patriotic wars of conquest, and so we never have the opportunity to look from the outside in and to question the relevancy of the whole belief system that we find ourselves buying into, and those that do begin to assert or look into other ways of being, or that decide on trying to live life in a way that puts them outside of the box or outside of the norms and expectations of society and culture and world that has been assimilated in such way that they are largely thought of as crazy, insane. Um, and there are those, there are cases like the Unabomber and his whole diatribe that he wrote about and how he tried to, live off of the grid, but then um, being a terrorist, how people that choose to live outside of the box and not have to be fully dependent on just the whole way that the global economy works, um, with the whole supply and demand and being totally dependent on corporations and stores and grocery stores and Walmart and things of that nature for all the goods that you may need to simply survive in this world. That the whole way that they depict doomsday preppers as being just lunatic fringe, those people that are on the fringes of society that believe in these conspiracy theorists as far as, some global collapse or some kind of degradation of society, or even like a third global war, or EMP blast or nuclear attack or whatever. Even if it's a engineered storm, weather, hurricane, earthquake, whatever, that would cause the harmony of the system to continue unimpeded, that people like that are, labeled bonkers. And so we're going to look a little bit at a few stories that are, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us, and know that I appreciate all of you. There are quite a number of listeners and a lot of people in the chat room, and I really, really appreciate all of you. And so I hope that you are blessed by some of the things that we speak on and that we will be talking about on this program and others, by the shows that I've been doing in general. Because I do feel that we have a unique perspective, yours and mine, that we are able to relate to each other in a way where we can address these kind of issues and talk about these kind of things. Whereas for those that are fully indoctrinated into the whole American dream and being a global consumer, and how it's so difficult for them to even see outside of the world the reality that they are fully embedded within, and how they don't think that there's really anything that could exist outside of such a dream, and that nobody would ever even think of wanting something more or something different. And so I'm going to share some of the current events, but also I'm going to talk about tonight, in the later portion of the program, about a text called The Writings of Abraham, which one of the listeners at fallenangels.tv, the website that I run, which is a truth network, they brought this text up to me, and I had never heard of it before, never had chance to read it, but it's so interesting to me in that it documents and speaks about the differentiation between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how, especially in the first 10 generations from Adam to Noah, how the children of Adam and the lineage of the woman, how they were told specifically to never intermarry with the daughters of Cain, to never ever mix with the lineage of Cain. Welcome, Watcher Ruth and Olive and Vaubear and Sack and SJ and Mr. Rowe and Count Cranula, Salright, Robin, everybody, because there's a lot of Blue Girl, Cher, Cortec. We've got a lot of the regulars here, and even a lot of new people, which is always encouraging. And so I'm going to talk about that in the later portion of the show, but in the first part, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the current events, some of the news stories that have been released on beforeitsnews.com, which I find the site interesting in that it is user generated, and it is news that is not controlled by a mainstream media platform, but that is uploaded and brought to the attention of all the people that gather for fellowship there. It's stories from all those, individuals from all over the world on things that they've heard about, things that they have learned about, and a lot of whistleblowers, a lot of people that are privy to certain topics and certain issues, and that are using it as a platform to share with others, to spread the word and to make others aware of certain items. And so I think it has a pulse on what's up as far as, the sort of like the web bot, how it goes out and it checks the current headlines and the dialogue that is being shared among websites and media sources, and then gathers this information and is able to take a pulse on where we are as world. And also the web bots are able to predict things that might be happening short term or later in as far as the future. And I think that news sites such as Before It's News and others, where they are media generated, user generated as far as the individuals worldwide, that they also have a predictive capacity to warn others on things which may be coming. And so I always like to visit the website at least a couple times a week, and to just see what are the headlines, in order to get kind of a feel for what's up with the world. And so I thought I'd bring out a couple of those, a couple of stories of interest. But the way that I want to approach this particular, what I'm about to go into, is I want to read something from a warning that was put out by Dr. Werner von Braun, who many of you know. He was a Nazi scientist, that he was in charge of the V2 rocket program under Adolf Hitler for the German SS, the Nazis, and that under Operation Paperclip after World War II, he was brought here to the United States. His, whatever crimes that he had been involved in, that they were expunged and that he was given free reign, and also given power and authority in that he was put in charge of the NASA space program here in the United States, and that he was able to utilize his expertise to fund the Apollo missions. I mean, and to not to fund them, but to coordinate and to control. And that it's my opinion that they were also trying to get because the Nazis had this whole belief system where they believed that they were part of this Aryan race, and that this Aryan race had fallen, that they were that this particular race had once reigned from Olympus, and that they were the pharaohs of old, and that they had been the ruling elites through time and history, going back to the prior times, or Tep Zepe, or Zep Tepe, however you want to speak about it, where the Egyptians write about the first times and how the fallen angels that they were ruling during that time. The ancient serpent, the feathered serpent, the winged snake, the guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the Anunnaki, or the seraphim angels, which were cast out of heaven with Lucifer, Satan, the adversary. That before the modern creation of humanity and the modern era, these particular gods ruled upon the earth, and not just here upon the earth, but also in the heavens, in portions of the heavens, specifically in other parts of the solar system, and that they were the ones that had established certain megalithic structures and sites that are found on places like the moon and the Mars. There's also on one of the moons of Mars, there's that monolith, and that other parts of the solar system, where the Anunnaki speak of there having established way stations or colonies. Even here on the earth, Eridu, which means home in the faraway, that it was a established colony for these particular beings, going back into the ancient, into the ancient history as far as the earth. And so they had a belief system that there were structures and technologies and buildings and wisdom and things out there, and not only here on the earth, but also out in the solar system, which were remnant of these particular beings. And that was one of the targets, one of the bases for the whole space program, was to gain access to these particular lost civilizations. And so it's the same thing even with some of the wars as far as the recent wars targeting Iraq and Afghanistan, that a lot of the ancient technologies and the ancient cuneiform scriptures and mythologies that were found in these particular regions of the world, that was one of the, not only the oil and the pipelines that were supposed to be built and things of that nature, but also because they were very ancient cradles for these cultures, the Sumerian and also um, other ancient civilizations, that because they were the regions which house some of this, like Babylon and Iraq, that these particular areas were targeted by our most recent stint of, the war on terrorism, and how it is that the particular museums that house these artifacts and some of these, very ancient cuneiform clay cylinders, how they were immediately, before our military even reached them, how there was an organized effort by certain um, certain powers that be to steal these artifacts and to strip the museums of the abundance of their priceless, of all of their priceless artifacts. And so keep that in mind when I read this, as far as the warning from Werner von Braun. And what I'm going to be going into is talking about the elites and how they're going to bring up and how they are also establishing the premise for an alien invasion, or what Ronald Reagan talked about to the United Nations in warning them that there was already a presence here, and how such a presence would unify the world, the power structure of the world, to look outside of our differences so that we can, be ready for such an opposing force, but that they are doing such things, and that they are unifying the world in such ways in order to bring about the world government, the New World Order, and that they want to not fight against such powers and principalities, these rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places, but that they want to give over such authority, as it says in Revelation, that all of the kings gave their power unto the beast for 1 hour of one day, that they are setting the premise for the reign of the Antichrist, and how even the whole thing of, the Ancient Alien series and the established premise, how so many individuals now believe that the ancient aliens are not only the creators of humanity, but the benefactors and will be saviors of humanity. That everything is being set for what will be the next step in disclosure. And so, let me see if I can go ahead. Actually, I'm probably just going to comment for a few more minutes, and then we'll read this on the other side, because I don't want to have to stop in the middle of it. And so, the first part of the show, we're going to talk about the strong delusion, which this past Saturday on my other show on blogtalkradio.com, I did a show on this particular topic, and I'll share that also on the break. I'll share, that particular show, the links to that show in the chat room for those that might be interested in looking it up and listening to it, because I covered a lot of information in it, and I also answered a lot of questions from people asking me about different things in relation to the strong delusion and also the ancient aliens, the fall of Lucifer, the war in the heavens, all these things. because they're all connected to the same thing. And so also another thing, when we return and I go into the other part as far as the seed, the opposition and the enmity between the two seed lines, the two lineages, I'm going to answer a couple of questions from a few listeners that are related to this particular topic. And hopefully in that way I'll be able to shed more light on some of this information. And also know that this Saturday I will actually be doing a show where I'm going to be reading and going into the detail as far as the writings of Abraham. And that it is absolutely a fascinating text, and I'm going to share certain portions of it when we get to the second hour. And I think you'll agree, especially for many of you that have now come to the discernment as I have, that there are in fact two different kinds of people on the planet, and that we're not all the same, that we're not all alike, but that there is in fact a race of beings, a race of people, a lineage that is connected to the Nakash, to the serpents, the sons of Anak, and that they do not have the goodwill of humanity as their focus, but that they are trying to multiply, rape, pillage, and plunder, murder, chaos, and that they are the ones that are orchestrating from behind the scenes the New World Order. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. All right, I'm going to talk about this, set the premise for this segment, and then in the second hour, we'll go into some of these questions and then comment on the writings of Abraham and the differentiation of the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how that, as far as revelation, is so very important for us, we as the last generation, the fig tree generation, because it helps us to understand the postulation that was put forth by Christ in Matthew chapter 13, where he talks about the parable of the sower and the enemy that snuck into the garden and that sowed the tares. And that when the servants asked him, he said, let both grow together until the time of the end, which is the time that we're living in now. And so I'll elaborate on all that when we get to that part. But first, I did post a link to the show that I did on the strong delusion, the alternative Christ, and the world order. I'll post that again into the chat room. Welcome, Wild Bob. Good to see you, brother. Always a pleasure to have you as part of the listening audience. And all the others. It's always a blessing to have such a entertaining and knowledgeable audience to fellowship with. All right. So, going into this with Werner von Braun. Dr. Werner von Braun was a top-ranking SS officer who was also the head of the Nazi rocket program during World War II. Von Braun was brought to America after the war because our government considered his knowledge and expertise too vital to fall into the hands of our enemies. Dr. von Braun and his colleagues brought with them a wealth of information gleaned from other top Nazi scientists like his boss, SS General Hans Kammler. Von Braun may have been privy to work on anti-gravity propulsion, vehicles reputedly under development during the last days of the Third Reich. Over the years of his tenure, von Braun may also have enjoyed access to NASA's secret programs. It certainly does not seem this way, as von Braun apparently began to see the big picture regarding the true goals of the American space program and how the military-industrial complex was manipulating it according to a secret and hidden agenda during the latter years of his life. I'm sure that he was part of all that as well. All right, Dr. Carol Rosen first met with Dr. Werner von Braun in February of 1974. It was at this time, shortly before his death in 1977, that von Braun confided to Dr. Rosen the details of this secret space agenda. Inviting her into his office, von Braun stunned Dr. Rosen by describing this plan point for point, as well as describing in detail exactly where it was all leading: planetary control under an oppressive one-world government. According to Dr. Rosen, von Braun then gave her one supreme assignment: to thwart this plan to stop the weaponization of space. Failure to do so would lead to calamity for the human race, as a secretive transnational power already in existence would move to permanently take control of this planet through a hoaxed alien invasion from outer space. According to von Braun, space-based weapons, later known as the Star Wars program, were to be publicly promoted as our space shield against the evil Russians, and then they would be promoted as our defense against terrorists from third world countries. Then their necessity would be justified as protection against asteroids and meteors, and the last card, the final justification, according to von Braun, would be their installation in orbit against an extraterrestrial threat from outer space. Von Braun told Dr. Rosen that she would begin to notice a certain spin on the news which would illustrate the need to build space-based weaponry because our enemies might have these weapons, so our intelligence community would proceed on the assumptions that they do have these weapons. And so that's exactly how the Star Wars program transpired. Just a couple more paragraphs, and then I'm going to talk about another piece of information which is linked to this, and then I'll share a video on that's also in connection with this particular information. According to Werner von Braun, all of these public announced threats were lies. Von Braun cited the reality of nuclear suitcase bombs being available even then, as well as chemical, viral, bacterial, and biological terror weapons against which these space-based weapons would be useless. More importantly, von Braun told Dr. Rosen in 1974 that we already had the technology to build anti-gravity vehicles and entire transportation systems which did not require so-called fossil fuels, but instead use beams of energy, thereby eliminating all pollution from these sources permanently. Perhaps Dr. von Braun had seen anti-gravity vehicles with his own eyes in Germany before the end of the war, as well as their continued development at other secret technology sites afterwards. Von Braun further told Dr. Rosen that we had the ability to transform our war-based military-industrial complex into a space and energy industry for the benefit of all humanity, and that we had the capability of building entirely non-polluting transportation technologies using this same limitless energy while ending the arms race without dislocating the jobs associated with it. Mankind could transition to a new industrial paradigm and usher in an era of peace, plenty, and prosperity for everyone on Earth. Of course, what is equally interesting is what Dr. von Braun left unsaid. If space-based weapons technologies are not really being developed to protect the U.S. and its allies against a rogue nation and their weapons, if indeed such weapons are useless against suitcase nuclear bombs as well as chemical, biological, and viral weapons, then exactly why are they being developed? Could select populations of resistors, whether nation states or isolated groups opposed to the coming New World Order, be singled out and targeted for elimination? That is certainly one possibility. Yet another possibility is that such space-based weapons will be part of the smoke and mirrors light show designed to terrify the population of the Earth when Project Bluebeam debuts with its false projected presentation of an alien invasion. Couple more paragraphs here. According to Dr. Stephen Greer, the head of the Disclosure Project, he's a shill, the prospect that a shadowy governmental and transnational entity exists that has kept UFOs secret and is planning a deception that will dwarf the events of 9/11 is a scenario that more people within the depths of our government have begun to reveal. If Dr. von Braun already knew that anti-gravitic technology existed in 1974, then we must also conclude that part of the coming alien light show and invasion scenario scheduled to frighten us into the arms of the one world government utilizing the technology described in Project Bluebeam is based on anti-gravitic alien craft under the planetary control of the unseen Illuminati hand, which silently moves under the radar of the world's staged media. Even Dr. Greer, who had brought Dr. Rosen to Washington, D.C. to publicly testify about Dr. von Braun's warning and concern for the future of humanity based upon the nefarious plans he had uncovered during his tenure at NASA, admits that he was at first skeptical of the reality behind this proposal. All right. Last two things here, and then we'll go into the other aspects of this information. Dr. Greer writes, since 1992, I have seen this script unveiled to me by at least a dozen well-placed insiders. Of course, initially I laughed, thinking this just too absurd, far-fetched, and yet others told me explicitly that things that look like UFOs but that are built and under the control of deeply secretive black projects were being used to simulate hoax ET appearing events, including some abductions and cattle mutilations to sow the earthly seeds of cultural fear regarding life in outer space, and that at some point after global terrorism events would unfold that would utilize the now revealed alien reproduction vehicles or reverse engineered UFOs made by humans by studying actual ET craft to hoax an attack on the Earth. The goal of this hoax-based alien invasion was simply control through fear to drive governments of all nations to submit and unite under one central authority, a one-world government, and as Dr. Greer said, to justify eventually spending trillions on space weapons, thus uniting the world in fear in militarism and war. All right, we're going to stop there and go into this other thing that I want to share before we get to the next break. And this has to do with an article, whistleblower, massive extraterrestrial crafts are hiding behind the moon, of which I will post a link to it in the chat room after I read through some of the article, because we're going to quickly run out of time. A government whistleblower recently stated that officials are baffled as to why numerous extraterrestrial crafts have docked themselves on the opposite side of the moon. Dr. Eric Norton, an outside consultant for NSA and NASA for the past 12 years, was hired to track various objects in space, including meteors, comets, etc., but recently has been following a number of unidentified aircrafts that were heading towards Earth. On January 22, 2012, Dr. Norton was called to the McDonald Observatory in Texas and saw, quote, massive three-dimensional black structures in space in straight-line formations advancing in the direction of planet Earth. The objects seemed to be emitting some sort of force field that deflected space particles from touching their surface, almost like the magnetic field around the Earth. The objects were getting so close that with our telescopes, we could see the structural features of these things in high detail. They were shaped as three-dimensional L-shaped craft, and by January 2013, the objects had been tracked to about 200,000 miles past the planet Mars. Once they reached this point, almost instantaneously, the object vanished from our telescopic lenses as if they had activated some sort of invisibility shield at the flick of the switch. I knew that the upper echelons of government were worried about these things because I was under a constant 24/7 guard by Secret Service agents for nearly the entire year of 2013. We watched the skies in disbelief. We didn't know what was going on or where these things were. According to my calculations, these things would have been so close to us by now that we would have no problem seeing them in the night sky had they stayed visible to us. We didn't know if they were still coming or had left the solar system. Just a little bit more. Dr. Norton was sent home and was awaiting additional order if needed, but had not heard anything else about the situation for approximately 6 months. Upon all the commotion around the government shutdown, as well as the shutdown of numerous space monitoring programs, Dr. Norton finally made a call to a close friend who he worked with confidentially, who told Norton that the objects reappeared and had repositioned themselves behind the moon in a circular type of alignment, which allowed them to dock to the backside of the moon in order to remain invisible to skywatchers. Norton added that the blackout of all space monitoring programs was essential in keeping the lid on what had happened. Quote, we don't know what they are doing, or what they're going to do. We do know that there have already been fluctuations in Earth's gravity field and the gravity field which links the moon to the Earth. According to Dr. Norton, if this information were to be revealed to the masses, it would cause a breakdown of all religions as well as the breakdown of society itself. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'll post a link to this article in the chat room. I'm going to share one other thing in connection with this. Because, again, as I said, all of this is to unite the world, again, under the envelope of a one world government. And that everything is being pushed in order to scare us into supporting the one world order, the new world order, but also into submitting to the reign of the Antichrist. Because, as I said earlier, the premise has been established that the ancient aliens are the creators of humanity, and that they will also be the saviors of humanity. And as such, they will that we will all need to submit to a fallen angel type being, the Antichrist, and that all the regions of the world are to give authority to him in submitting to, he's going to save us from save us from all of the problems that we are going to be faced with as a world. All right. All right, this is, I'm going to post a link to a video that you can find that also talks about this, how they are going to fake an alien invasion, the elites. I'll post this into the link, into the chat room. And then when we come back from break, as I said, we're going to pick up on the other part of what I wanted to go into, specifically the writings of Abraham, talk a little bit about that text, answer a couple questions, and speak about the differentiation again between these two bloodlines, these two lineages, because I'm going to tie that information together with this, and then finally show to you how what Christ speaks about in Matthew chapter 13, how this ties together with the elites of the world, and how, the Nazis, they knew about this information, and how so many people are trying to say that, because the Nazis knew about the two seed lines, and that Cain was a child of the devil, that somehow makes the information meaningless, or that we shouldn't look into it or regard it as relevant, simply because they, taught and knew the same things. But what they don't tell you is that the Nazis and the other aspects, supposed white supremacists or whoever, that embrace this particular revelation, this knowledge, that they are the seed of Cain. They are the sons of the serpent. They're the ones that are connected to the tares. They're the ones that are going to be eradicated and judged when Christ comes again. And so it's just further confirmation as to the truth of what we're dealing with, as far as the enmity, which was one of the oldest prophecies, going back to Genesis chapter 3, that when the Most High said to the serpent, I'm going to put enmity between thy seed and her seed, meaning the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, and thy sons and her sons. And that this is playing out, as Christ said, let both grow together until the time of the end. And that we are at that time now. And so the war between these two bloodlines, these two seed lines, is going to escalate unto the battle of Armageddon, which we know is the end of Revelation, and that is the last battle of the forces of darkness against the sons of light. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and I'm going to cover in this part of the show, the focus will be on the writings of Abraham, which is a text I had never heard about, but I spent a majority of today reading, and it's very interesting text to say the least. And again, it will emphasize the difference between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how these are two different people, and that they relate to the wheat and the tares, the goat and the sheep, and the enmity between the sons of Cain and the sons of Adam. But before we do so, before we get into that aspect of the show, I do want to remind everybody that that Revolution Radio is listener supported, and that we're corporate free and commercial free, and that in order for us to continue coming to you in the ways that we do need your monetary assistance, and that for those of you that can afford to, in which ways you desire to support the network, whether, one-time contribution, purchase of the coffee mug or t-shirt or the seed pack or the bullet drive or whatever, or, a monthly donation, subscribe to the archives, um, gain access to all the MP3 files for all the various hosts, which there are quite a few, quite a number of hosts that have dedicated their time and have volunteered their services in order to make Revolution Radio a success and to have evolved it to what it is today. That please, if you do appreciate the platform as truth and as a platform for information that you will not find spoken about, or sharing perspective and dialogue and opinion in the way that we do, largely in many places at all. There are others out there that are working to bring information to light, such as we do. But it's my opinion there's not any other source that I know of that has unified such an eclectic and motley crew of people and opinions and perspectives together in the way that Revolution Radio has. And having this information come to you 24/7 on two different studios, in my mind, in the 5 years that Revolution Radio has been in existence, the leaps and bounds that we have come to from, come to be what we are now is just, in my mind, absolutely amazing. And so, if you can, please do support the network and help us to continue to be able to come to you in the way that we do. All right. That being said, I do want to go into a couple of questions which will set the premise for the information that we're going to be talking about and going into, and that you can look up if you want the writings of Abraham to find. It's a very easy search. It's just that I had never heard about it, as I'm guessing many of you had never heard about it either. But the first question comes from Kathy Tiso, and I'll just read the commentary. It says this: "It just takes time. By following you over the years, I can explain weird things in the past and to show how it matches the Bible perfectly. When I told some of my family about Genesis 6, they were visibly mad. Being raised Catholic, they thought I was being satanic. But now with the ancient aliens and movies like Noah coming out, it brings everything that you've been teaching to the table. My question is, do you think that Nimrod was human and then became a giant? Also, have you heard that Noah's son found the books of writing of the Watchers and passed it down to Nimrod so that he genetically changed himself into a giant?" And so I told her I'd answer her on air. And so what I want to share is a passage from the writings of Abraham, which will introduce you to the text. And then I'm going to elaborate with the book of Jasher, because it gives a lot more information on this particular topic. But from chapter 17 it says, "Ham knew that he and his posterity could not bear the priesthood because of the curse of Cain which was upon them, and knowing there was great power in the sacred garments, he stole them from his father Noah and hurried to his tents. Rousing his family, Ham instructed them to strike their tents and led them away to the plain of Shinar, where he dwelt and where Ham died. Now Ham's wife was named Zeptah, and she was also of the seed of Cain, and they had a daughter named Zeptah. This daughter, after the death of Ham, led a body of his people westward until they reached a body of water in the land of Zepta, which is Egypt, where they settled, and as the waters receded from off the land, they spread out and built many cities and temples. All right, what is important to make note of as far as Ham is that he stole these sacred garments. Now, what they were, we have no idea, but they were given to Adam and passed down through the sons of Adam until Noah received them and took them into the ark with him. And his son Ham stole them from him and passed them on to Nimrod. Well, actually, to his son Cush, and Cush, after his death, passed them on to Nimrod, and that these garments gave Nimrod the capacity to be a magician of sorts. I'll read one passage about Nimrod in chapter 1 of the writings of Abraham. It said this: Moreover, Nimrod was a man of mighty power, for he was a master Mahan, meaning like a sorcerer or a shaman, and had in his hands the secrets of the ancients as they had come down from Cain, wherein he knew the words of power and the signs for using them, and he had the holy garments which had been given unto Adam in the garden, in which was great power. And so remember, Adam was the first priest of the order of Melchizedek, and that when he was cast out of paradise and exiled and banished here to the earth, that he was established as the first priest of this holy line. And he was given this garment by the Most High, which gave him power and authority. All right. So I'm going to elaborate on this just a little bit, because this will explain why Nimrod had the power and the authority that he did have, and how he was able to unite the world in what was one of the first attempts at unifying the planet in a new world order. That the Atlanteans also attempted to do the same kind of thing, and destruction was brought upon them, in that Atlantis was destroyed and sunk, and that they had to disperse into other areas of the world. And that when Nimrod tried to establish the same kind of authority, the same kind of power, and built the Tower of Babel and unified all the people to build this, whatever it was, the Stargate, in order to, enter into the heavens, that his efforts were confounded, and the Most High sent the angels down to separate the peoples into various tribes and tongues, and that they could no more understand each other. And so the Tower of Babel and the efforts to unify the world in global government at that time was also displaced, and that they were judged in the same kind of way. All right, let me read this. All right. And they're going out, Ham stole those garments. This is from the book of Jasher. I believe it is chapter 9. Not positive. I'll tell you in just a minute. And in their going out, Ham stole those garments from Noah his father, and he took them, and he hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begat his firstborn Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers, And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments, and God gave him might and strength. And he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered upon them the animals before the Lord. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brethren, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about. And the Lord delivered all the enemies of his brethren in his hands, and God prospered him from time to time in his battles, and he reigned upon the earth. Therefore it became current in those days, when a man ushered forth those that he had trained up for battle, he would say to them, like God did to Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter in the earth, and who succeeded in the battles that prevailed against his brethren, that he delivered them from the hands of their enemies. So may God strengthen us and deliver us this day. Last thing, and when Nimrod was 40 years old, at that time there was a war between his brethren and the children of Japheth, so that they were in the power of their enemies. And Nimrod went forth at that time, and he assembled all the sons of Cush and their families, about 460 men, and he hired also from some of his friends and acquaintances about 80 men, and he gave them their hire, and he went up with them to battle. And when he was on the road, Nimrod strengthened the hearts of the people that went with him. All right. Anyway, so Nimrod came to be over all the peoples then at that time. And at first he was blessed by the Most High to be able to rule over and to assert his power and his authority, because he had these garments of power. But then he established idolatry, and he wanted to be worshipped as a god. And so that's when Abram was established, and he would be the one to come and to destroy the idols, and also to show the people of of Shinar, how the Most High God, the unseen God, Jehovah, Yahweh Elohim, that he was the only true God over all things. And so, and then Nimrod tried to kill Abram by burning him in a fire at a place called Kasdim. And for 3 days they burned this oven to where it got so hot, and they threw Abram and his brother Nahor in there, and Nahor died, and Abram was spared. He was protected by the angels, and not even a hair on his head was singed. And after 3 days he came out of the oven, and Nimrod exalted him, and then Abram taught to the people of Shinar about the Most High God. And afterwards he left because he knew that, you know, the other magicians and the other priests of Nimrod were going to try to kill him, and that he was promised a land where his seed would prosper, and that, you know, Canaan was his promised land. And so he left, and he went to a place called Haran, and then afterwards he was led into Canaan. All right. And so these garments of power gave Nimrod the authority, and it also speaks about in a different text, and I don't know exactly where right now. I've read so many, but it does talk about how the line of Ham, after the flood of Noah's day, that there was a certain person that had found the writings, the teachings of the Watchers written on stone, and that he was able to learn the secrets of the Watchers and to open up such knowledge again, and that he taught it to his children, and that this information passed down to the line of Ham and Canaan and to Nimrod, and that he was also able to use such knowledge and to interact with the fallen angels, so that he did become a Gibberim, is what the Bible says, which means a mighty man or a giant. And so whether that was in stature, I don't, believe that he just all of a sudden spurted 3 or 4 feet, or, became 18 foot tall or something of that nature. But that with that knowledge, and also with having stolen the garments from that were passed down from Adam all the way to Noah, and that were stolen by Ham, that these garments gave the person who wore them power and authority. And just to give you some more information about this particular these garments, it further relates that Esau killed Nimrod, that when he was hunting, and Esau was also a mighty hunter, that he killed Nimrod and stole the garments from him, and that Esau then became the owner over these particular garments of power. All right. So that was that particular question. I'm going to answer the other one. All right. This is the question from Sam. He says this: I just listened to your second Prophecy Club interview on the serpent seed. I have been following your work for several years now, and I have researched and discerned much of this knowledge. I have spent a lot of time and spiritual energy explaining the seed concept to friends and family. And I gotta tell you, Zen, I have found out, if the Most High or the great I Am does not spark a fire in someone, they just won't get it. A lot do get it, though, even though it seems so right on and really simple to see that the Bible makes sense through this concept. Anyways, what do you know of the Rh negative blood, and is there somewhere I could find info, or is this just rubbish? And was Cain a vampire or a non-human creature? All right, now as far as to whether Cain was a vampire, I've got a very interesting passage I'm going to share with you when we come back from break. It's very interesting. And as far as the Rh negative factor, I also spoke about and did a show on the third strand DNA and how there's a parasite which mimics a third strand DNA, and how the elites, having connection to the serpent seed, and that their father was the devil, how they are prone to and have a inclination more so to what we cite as the psychic phenomena, or to magic abilities, and that the Rh negative factor is also one of these aspects that gives them such prevalence, and that they intermarry and breed amongst themselves, even to the point where their children are schizophrenic and and contaminated and weirded out from such inbreeding. But they do this in order to keep this particular inclination strong in their bloodlines, that they give a higher priority to their ability to perform magic and to engage in rituals such as what the fallen angels have taught them, the Satanism, the Luciferianism, all those things which give them the power to conjure and to interact with devils and demons, that this kind of thing is greatly honored amongst their bloodlines and their lineages. And that's why they strategically intermarry, half brothers, half sisters, cousins, first cousins, things of that nature, in order to keep their bloodlines pure and powerful, what they consider powerful in such way. And so that's why they do what they do. And if you've not heard the show that I've done on the 3-strand DNA, I'll share some of that when we return. All right, welcome back for the final segment. And I wanted to share something as to the whole question on whether Cain might have been some kind of vampiric um, type of being, because he was a child of the devil, a scion of the serpent. And it's interesting that you mentioned this, and I've been asked this same kind of thing prior. But I want to share a passage from the Apocalypse of Moses. It says this. This is the story of Adam and Eve after they had gone out of paradise, and Adam knew his wife Eve and went upwards to the sun rising, and abode there 18 years and 2 months, and Eve conceived and bare 2 sons, Adiphotas, who is called Cain, and Amylebes, who is called Abel. And after this, Adam and Eve were with one another, and while they were sleeping, Eve said to Adam, her Lord, my Lord Adam, behold, I have seen in a dream this night the blood of my son Amylebes, who is styled Abel, being poured into the mouth of Cain, his brother. And he went on drinking it without pity. But he begged him to leave him a little of it, yet he hearkened not to him, but gulped down the whole, nor did it stay in his stomach, but came out of his mouth. And then Adam said, let us arise and go and see what has happened to them. I fear lest the adversary may be assailing them somewhere. And they both went and found Abel murdered, aye, by the hand of Cain his brother. And God saith to Michael the archangel, say to Adam, reveal not the secret that thou knowest to Cain thy son, for he is a son of wrath. But grieve not, for I will give thee another son in his stead. He shall show to thee all that thou shalt do. Do not tell him nothing. Thus spake the archangel to Adam. But he kept the word in his heart, and with him also Eve, though they grieved concerning Abel their son. Now, is that not interesting as to whether Cain, after he murdered Abel, whether he indulged, as it's passed down and taught by the elites, the religion that they follow, the Luciferianism, the Satanism, how they're involved in cannibalism and also the drinking of blood, that it seems like perhaps their patriarch, the whole patriarch of their line, Cain, that he may indeed have been involved in such abominable behavior. And that, as Adam and Eve had dreamt it, perhaps so it really did happen. I'll relate it one more time. I have seen in a dream this night the blood of my son Amylebes, who is styled Abel, being poured into the mouth of Cain, his brother. And he went on drinking it without pity. But he begged him to leave a little of it, yet he hearkened not to him, but gulped down the whole, nor did it stay in his stomach, but came out of his mouth. All right, for those that are not familiar with this text, I'm going to post it in the chat room so you can look at it yourself. And yes, it's interesting to say the least. Now, as to the other question on whether the line of Cain are genetically different and whether the Rh negative factor gives them the capacity to, to perform magic, to believe, to be able to do things that we otherwise are not able to, as these sons of Adam. Let me just read this real quick, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because I've read it before, but I will read this real quick. It says this: he wanted my friend to secretly prove once and for all if this was true or not. The subject claimed that his extended family and their cousins, who are kings, queens, princes, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, believe they are children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings. He'd been taught by his tutors that once upon a time his ancestors had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. He was torn to know if a child of Cain was actually genetically different and whether he could be saved. He thought of the Vatican's pronouncement that the aliens are our cousins and Vishnu teachings of a time when gods flew in spaceships and destroyed whole cities in a single blast. He even had notes about Elijah being caught up in a chariot of fire. Maybe he had misread or misunderstood the entire history of his Bible. Maybe from Genesis to Revelation, it was about some far more tangible and real fallen angel alien cousins than the ghost-like destroying angels he had always pictured in his imagination. It only matters what they believe, because our original subject and his relatives, who are kings, queens, princesses, as well as the leaders of industry and banking worldwide, believe and act as though they are children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings, but not human only, hybrid human, more than human, superior alien human. They once reigned from Olympus and were pharaohs. Whatever the real truth of their history, their belief is the driver of their actions. Being the true believers they are, they will continue to operate in accordance with their belief and the laws of alien Darwinian type survival. That's why they interbreed, to maintain the purity of their bloodline. That's why they secretly meet and connive to pass power between themselves. And that's why they must fool the rest of mankind into wars of self-destruction and debt, that we may be forever enslaved to their lusts on this prison planet till death do us part. More than afraid, they know in their hearts that this is a fight for survival. One last paragraph. It had begun, just as my friend had said, as a murder investigation, starting with the first murder when that Luciferian demon dad had first whispered of the evil deed to his willing child Cain. It continued down through time, the sons of Adam fighting for survival and destroying the alien giants in Canaan land, David the hybrid Goliath and his 4 hybrid brothers, and all the hidden true believers since, hiding in plain sight, so powerful, so important, yet so afraid. These earthbound half-cousins of ours continue to laugh, but it is a nervous laugh at that, as they have a joke or two at our expense, recreating their lying fathers fall to earth and flashing their heretofore secret gang sign hand signs to each other right in our face. I know now how dangerous their beliefs are, because they are being driven by their beliefs, taught to them by their real alleged father, the father of lies, and even now he knows the truth and whispers in his initiate's ears, just as he did in Cain's ear, the sons of Adam, as long as they live, are dangerous. All right. And so you can see that the elites know that they are not the children of Adam. They don't, and they know that they are connected to Satan as the father, the progenitor of their line, and that they believe that they are genetically superior, and that through their genetic disposition that they have the divine right to rule and to control and to impose their will on humanity. And that because we're so ignorant and classed as useless eaters, that we need their power structure and their imposition to rule over and to control the fate of humanity and the collective as a world, which we don't, and we certainly don't need them to impose the New World Order and such police state measures and rule, above the law rule as they do, and that they subjugate us to. But all of this is for purpose and is for reason, and that even in the book of Daniel, it speaks about how the beast kingdom, the fourth beast kingdom, will be a unified one world order, and that after this one world order comes to power and authority, and the Antichrist is revealed as the dragon, the beast that they wondered after the beast, that then the Most High will come and reestablish the world in harmony, and that there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and that there will never again be evil or the corruption and the incitement, the order out of chaos that is being perpetuated, the controlled opposition, the decimation of minorities and peoples, and the slaughter of innocents, that the captives will be freed, and that the meek shall inherit the earth. And so there's reason for all things, and it's my opinion that this is, the generation that will see the unveiling, the second coming of the Son of Man, all of the prophecies coming to light, and all things played out. And so it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. And so anyways, one other thing, and I'll be covering this more on the show that I do this Saturday. I'm going to share one other thing from the writings of Abraham. This is interesting. I'll just read a little bit of it, and I'll be going into this in great detail this Saturday, where I'll be writing about and sharing this entire story. All right. It says this. And when Noah was 450 years old, he begat a son, and he called his name Japheth. 42 years later, he begat another son of her who was the mother of Japheth, and he called his name Shem. This is the interesting part. 8 years later, Noah begat a son of his wife Naamah, who was of the seed of Cain, and he called his name Ham, for he said, through him will the curse be preserved in the land. Remember how we talked about how the seed of Cain had continuance through the flood, and that there was reason for this? Just as it says in the parable, Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the sower, when the servants asked him if he wanted them to root up the tares, But he said, no, let both grow together until the end. And that, interesting enough, at harvest, when harvest time comes around, that is the only time you can see the difference between the wheat and the tares. That the tares look exactly like the wheat, but that at harvest, the wheat is heavenly laden with bounty and bows in the wind and bows before the sun, whereas the tares, they stand haughty and proud and straight up, and there's no bending of them. And much like Lucifer and the children of Cain, who are proud and haughty and arrogant and do not wish to bow to be servants, that even the angels, that they were created to be servants and messengers unto humanity, and that they were to serve such purpose. Lucifer refused to be a servant. He wanted to be as the Most High. He wanted to be like a king. And the line of Cain is similar in disposition. They have the same inclination. They refuse to be servants to others. They want others to serve them. And so that's the difference between the wheat and the tare. And why it is that, Christ said, let both grow until the end. And that at the end, he would send his angels as reapers to gather the tare for burning, but the wheat for his barn. And that this also has to play out with the whole thing of the wise and the foolish virgin. It's the same kind of thing. All right, so anyways, I'm going to continue reading here. 8 years later, Noah begat a son of his wife Naamah, who was of the seed of Cain, and he called his name Ham. For he said, through him will the curse be preserved in the land. Chapter 12. Now Noah had taken a wife of the seed of Cain, and she was a righteous woman. Nevertheless, the curse remained with her seed according to the word of God. And Noah took her on this wise. For the word of the Lord came unto Noah, saying, take unto thyself Naamah, the daughter of Lamech, who dwelleth here in the city of thy fathers. For she hath been faithful to my gospel, wherefore I shall preserve through her the seed of Cain through the flood. Is that not interesting? This Lamech was the father of Naamah, was the seed of Cain, being the son of Methuselah, the son of Mahujael, the son of Ired, the son of Enoch, and the son of Cain. All right. So anyways, one other thing, just a couple more passages. I know we're almost done. And while Naamah was yet a child, great consternation fell upon the seed of Cain, for Ired, the son of Enoch, the son of Cain, had become a member of the secret combination and was privy to all of its secrets, until one night when the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Ired, thou hast done evil instead of good, and hast followed after Satan rather than God. Wherefore I shall destroy thee and thine house when I send in the floods upon the earth. But Ired was pricked in his heart and pled with the Lord to show mercy and to preserve his seed through the great flood. Seeing that his penitence was true, the Lord said to him, Ired, if thou wilt repent and reveal the evils of the secret combination unto the sons of Seth, I will have mercy upon thee, and I will join thy seed unto the seed of Seth, that it may be preserved through the great flood. Is that not interesting? All right. Chapter 14, skipping ahead again. When the word of the Lord came unto Noah, saying, take unto thyself Naamah, the daughter of Lamech, who dwelleth here in the city of thy fathers, for she hath been faithful to my gospel, wherefore I shall preserve through her the seed of Cain through the flood. Noah went unto his father Methuselah. Methuselah inquired of the Lord, and returned this word unto his son Lamech. Verily, thus saith the Lord, mine handmaid Naamah have I given unto my son Noah, that the seed of Cain might be preserved through the great flood which I will send upon the earth. Wherefore let not my son Noah fear to take her to wife, for in so doing he shall be blessed, for through him will come all nations. Last couple things here. Wherefore say unto him, Noah, my son, I have looked upon the evils of the sons of men, which have come up before me, for they have corrupted the whole earth, save only this city in which thou dwellest. Therefore I will send in the flood upon the earth, but thou and thy seed will I preserve through the flood, for I will send mine angels to instruct thee in the building of an ark, wherein ye shall be saved. All right. I think I'm going to stop there. But I'll pick this up. I'll pick this up again this Saturday. So I do invite you to join me on blogtalkradio.com/fallenangels.tv. And I'll be covering the rest of this story. But is it not interesting? So many people have asked and inquired as to how the seed of Cain made it through the flood and why it was that they were preserved. And again, the reason is because they, like the sons of Adam or the sons of Seth, would have continuance together, that the enmity would continue until Christ comes again, and that when he comes, the harvest will ensue. The angels, as the reapers, shall be sent out to gather the wheat for the barn and the tares for burning. And then the two bloodlines, the two lineages shall be separated. And remember, it's only in the harvest, at the time of harvest, that you can even tell the difference between a wheat and a tare. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should look up the story. Look up the differences, the nature of the tare, and how it mimics the wheat, and how if you eat of it, it will poison a whole batch of wheat like leaven, and it will make you sick. We speak on, and that we will be talking about on this program and others, by the shows that I've been doing in general, because I do feel that we have a unique perspective, yours and mine, that we are able to relate to each other in a way where we can address these kind of issues and talk about these kind of things. Whereas for those that are fully indoctrinated into the whole American dream and being a global consumer, and how it's so difficult for them to even see outside of the world the reality that they are fully embedded within, and how they don't think that there's really anything that could exist outside of such a dream, and that nobody would ever even think of wanting something more or something different. And so I'm going to share some of the current events, but also I'm going to talk about tonight, in the later portion of the program, about a text called the Writings of Abraham, which One of the listeners at fallenangels.tv, the website that I run, which is a truth network, they brought this text up to me, and I had never heard of it before, never had chance to read it, but it's so interesting to me in that it documents and speaks about the differentiation between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how, especially in the first 10 generations from Adam to Noah, how the children of Adam and the lineage of the woman, how they were told specifically.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
The grand deception as matrix is all-encompassing, broad-reaching, veiled in the subtlety of finite machination, so covert in imposition. All those born into its nurturance are raised unknowingly, incarcerated by its deviant proposition. One was never even granted choice or opinion which could assert deviation from its programmed assimilation. Parents, grandparents, ensure loved ones foster compliance. Children make swift accord, resonating with sentence which postures them for role as good worker bee or soldier ant, ready to surrender life for benefit of queen and hive. So few of the farwalkers can even grasp the dialectic fashioned as prison. Even those privileged with instruction and advantage are lost to resolution, which, connecting all dots, grants one insight into the revelation which unlocks all speculation, illuminating insane. And there are those, there are cases like the Unabomber and his whole diatribe that he wrote about, and how he tried to, live off of the grid, but then being a terrorist, how people that choose to live outside of the box and not have to be fully dependent on just the whole way that the global economy works, with the whole supply and demand, and being totally dependent on corporations and stores and grocery stores and Walmart and things of that nature for all the goods that you may need to simply survive in this world. That the whole way that they depict doomsday preppers as being just lunatic fringe, those people that are on the fringes of society, that believe in these conspiracy theorists as far as, some global collapse or some kind of degradation of society, or even like a third global war, or EMP blast, or nuclear attack, or whatever. Even if it's a engineered storm, weather, hurricane, earthquake, whatever, that would cause the harmony of the system to continue unimpeded, that people like that are, labeled bonkers. And so we're going to look a little bit at a few stories that are, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us, and know that I appreciate all of you. There are quite a number of listeners and a lot of people in the chat room, and I really, really appreciate all of you. And so I hope that you are blessed by some of the things that specifically to never intermarry with the daughters of Cain, to never ever mix with the lineage of Cain. Welcome, Watcher Ruth and Olive and Vaubear and Sack and SJ and Mr. Rowe and Count Cranula, Salright, Robin, everybody. There's a lot of Blue Girl, Cher, Cortec. We've got a lot of the regulars here, and even a lot of new people, which is always encouraging. And so, I'm going to talk about that in the later portion of the show, but in the first part, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the current events, some of the news stories that have been released on beforeitsnews.com, which I find the site interesting in that it is user generated, and it is news that is not controlled by a mainstream media platform, but that is uploaded and brought to the attention of all the people that gather for fellowship there. It's stories from all those, individuals from all over the world on things that they've heard about, things that they have learned about, and a lot of whistleblowers, a lot of people that are privy to certain topics and certain issues, and that are using it as a platform to share with others, to spread the word and to make others aware of certain items. And so I think it has a pulse on what's up as far as, the sort of like the webbot, how it goes out and it checks the current headlines and the dialogue that is being shared among websites and media sources, and then gathers this information and is able to the secrets of life, effort, and being. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Studio B at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. For the next 2 hours, I'm going to be talking to you about this matrix and the subtleties of its machination to help you to understand the complexities of design that we are all born and fostered into, how we have not even a choice to decide whether to accept it or not, but because our parents and their parents before them have all been brought up and unified in belief system, and have all bought into, again, without choice, bought into the American dream, the materialism, the corporate 9 to 5, the be a good taxpayer and support government, and patriotic wars of conquest, and so we never have the opportunity to look from the outside in and to question the relevancy of the whole belief system that we find ourselves buying into, and those that do begin to assert or look into other ways of being, or that decide on trying to live life in a way that puts them outside of the box or outside of the norms and expectations of society and culture and world that has been assimilated in such way that they are largely thought of as crazy